Oh.
Hello.
Hi, Geraldine.
How are you?
Sorry about that.
Oh no, you're all right. You're all right. Good morning.
Good morning. That was my fault. The modem just wasn't uploading like of all mornings. You know, the connection. But anyway, we're here now.
We're here now. We're here now. And you look lovely.
Oh, thanks a million. I got to wash my hair this morning. I'm delighted.
Bonus.
Yeah. And you look lovely in summery. I feel like you're on holidays, Geraldine. It's very summery.
Well, you know, in one's head in Ireland, you always have to imagine that, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. How's your packing going? I meant to ask you.
It's going. There's a lot of, yep. What the camera doesn't reveal is everything all over the place.
Yeah.
So, right?
You're so organized, Geraldine. Fair play to you.
No.
I remember when I was packing to move here, the start was very organized, and then eventually I had like black bags and I was like fucking everything. I like the place, I couldn't believe, like, and I was quite strict with clothes and, you know, like I wouldn't buy loads kind of thing. The place was just covered with bags.
Yeah.
So it's a good opportunity to get rid of stuff.
Isn't it? Yeah. I was just as you were clicking on there, I was just checking my adverts to see how much is going today.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, good idea. Sorry, anyway, I shouldn't distract you anymore, Geraldine.
No, God, no, you're fine. No, it's always a little confusing because once one link doesn't work and then we suddenly have several links floating around and we don't know which it is. So just so we always jump on the latest link is always the best one. So
yeah, perfect.
And that's, you know, that was me too this morning because I thought, okay, well, here we are. And then I thought, oh, wait, maybe she's on the first link.
And you wouldn't know with me, you know, you wouldn't know, I suppose, you know.
No bother. So how did the week go?
The week went, it was a bit jumbled up with the bank holiday. It kind of threw me a little bit, I have to admit. Okay. So I was very disappointed about it, but having went through it, so Saturday, Hazel was up during the night, so Saturday was a write-off. Sunday I took off. Monday I took 2 or 3 hours to work. Then Tuesday I had forgotten that I had to bring my car in, but I also told the school that I'd call in to them at 2 o'clock. And you know, with calls, you need to kind of like sit down. It needs to be like a block of time.
Yep.
And then I called to this other school that I go down to. So I just want to give you like a little picture.
Yep.
So I actually sat down yesterday and made calls. So I only got through 30 calls, but
that's pretty good.
I had a really positive response. None of them said to me like, no, we don't, what are you doing ringing me? Which I kind of half expected at the start. You know, I was kind of like gearing myself up going, I hate doing this.
Yeah.
But it actually ended up getting really easy and I really enjoyed it.
Good.
And they all remembered.
Good.
They all remembered us. Yeah, so it was all, like one is in Meath. So I said to him, look, will I keep you on? And if we ever end up down there, and another one was in Wicklow and the little fella broke his leg. So then I got really good at it halfway through and I was like, oh, it's not just camps, it's classes. And I think the video was very helpful for me to go back on, to remind myself to look at. So they all want me to send the link and they all want more information, whether it's camps or classes. So, and then I was setting up the thing on Class for Kids, you know, the trials, and that kind of delays me as well because I didn't know how to do it, you know, that kind of way.
Yeah.
So I have it all set up now. So, and they've all signed up for the free class for their teenage group in September.
Wow, well done.
Yes, I had about 8 of those. And they're all signed up for the free trial. So that one was really easy to sell.
Amazing. Okay, well that's the one that people normally say is really difficult to get teens out to. So you know, what I would do is I wouldn't assume that they're all going to now show up and the work is done. I would, because things happen, things change, they'll forget, they'll claim, some people will claim they never did it, they can't remember doing this. You know, I mean, you'll get all manner of things, and that's not to be, you know, mean or anything. It's just the reality of it. Just over time and experience, that's just kind of what goes on. Yeah. Even though each of them might have incredibly great intentions the moment that you've got them on the phone. By the time you actually get there, it's a different story, right? So, so what I would do is I would just make sure that they're on your email list and make sure that you put them possibly even in their own little email sequence specifically for that age group.
That's a good idea.
Because if you can nurture the older kids with something that's relevant to them, they don't want to feel babyish. They don't want to feel like they're lumped in with all of the other, you know, I don't know, you know, I'm just like throwing things out there. I don't
definitely don't. Yeah. Even once they come to 11, they don't. The 10-year-olds will tolerate the younger. 11, 12, they will not. They don't want anything to do with it. Yeah.
Get it. So, yeah. So, you know, you can do all kinds of things, even if it's just once a month and just something like great things for teens to do in Ireland in June. You know, dramatic things for teens to enjoy in July. Or, you know, practice your confidence skills in August with your teens by doing X, or, you know, I'm just throwing stuff out there, making it, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Find a topic that's a suitable thing for them and just put those 8 people on. That's a start. Just start with that.
Hey, brilliant. And the others then that I rang, they were all like, oh, hi, I remember talking to you. So I thought that was really good. And I just offered 10% discounts if they signed up this week for camps or for the autumn session. And then 1 or 2 wanted to try out a class in September, which is grand. I said, yeah, that's no hassle, you know. So it was all very positive. So I'm looking forward to getting back to those calls.
Very good. Very good. Well, so what did you learn from that?
I learned so much from making those calls. I think that I really believed, I surprised myself, I think that I believed in why I was making the call. You know, that type of way, because I was like at my kitchen table, just being like, oh shit, I've got to make this call, and then making it, you know, but being like, hi, it's Adrienne from Play Act Drama School. We spoke briefly kind of thing. But then I ended up kind of really getting into a rhythm. So I think that I learned that it was myself, my own, procrastinating that put me off kind of making the calls, or I would have made them much sooner, but I wasn't sure if I should or not. So
yeah,
I suppose I should trust my instinct a bit more,
Well, sometimes yes, sometimes no. If you don't even want to leave it down to an emotional thing and you want to just make it a logical thing, and
Yeah.
then you take the emotion out of it, because emotion drives us, right?
Yeah.
But if we're not feeling great, we won't push through on a day when we still need to do
Yeah.
it done.
Mm.
But if you were, put it this way, if you were feeling accountable to, say, your partner, and you really, really wanted to not let them down, you'd still push through when you're not feeling great. But
Yeah.
ourselves, we let it slide.
Yeah.
Right? And that is the hardest thing, is the self-discipline as a business owner, to just push through. So don't leave it to those whims. What's another way you can do so that you don't leave it to those whims?
I suppose I know now that, like, most of those people I spoke to were very happy to hear from me. Like, even like, I went to about 3:30 yesterday, which is a little bit late, if you've got kids, because they're collecting them. But the mother still wanted to know.
Great.
She still wanted to know what I was selling. She was like, I'm sorry now, I am in a rush. But so I suppose I feel much more confident after making those calls.
Okay.
And like, even if I am, calling someone at the wrong time, that it's okay, that I can say to them, I can send you this, or I can call you back, or, that I have options. So I suppose before I start being set up, and just having like a roundabout framework of
exactly
what I'm doing. Yeah. So that text you sent me actually really helped me as well.
Oh, good.
Yeah, because like, the way you would have a panic moment with your emotions, and I'm so emotional, like, So
you're a drama teacher. You should be.
Yeah, but Des often says to me, like, you think you're in EastEnders, Adrienne, But I don't mean to be. So I think that really helps me to remind myself to be logical and to have a framework. Yeah.
And you don't even have to be logical. It's just, you just need to follow the structure, right? If you take the emotion out of it by already doing the logical work, and then instead of having to be accountable to yourself, you're just accountable to an external schedule. That's it. Right? You've already created it. You know what you have to do. You want to get 30 phone calls in or 50 phone calls in this week to leads that are hanging out there who might sign up for a class or might sign up for a camp. It's money waiting to be made. But it is intimidating. A list of 50 is like looking at a range of mountains going, oh God, do I really feel like I've got, the legs on me today to go walk for 8 hours? Because that's what I have to do in order to get there. But the thing is as you said yourself, once you get into it, it gets easier and easier. You get practice. Somebody says something and then you're like, oh, I should have said that for the last two, but don't beat yourself up.
Exactly.
Instead, just add it to the repertoire as you go forward. And that's why I asked you, what did you learn from it? Because if you can reflect back on it immediately after you're done, the next time you go around to do it, you'll add that piece into the structure. And maybe you'll say, you know what? Damn, I got through 15 calls and I forgot to ask them about classes as a backup.
Yeah, that happened to me after the first few, and I went like, oh my gosh, like, I should be offering classes. So then I just kept going and added that into, and I was very fast at the start as well. Like, one woman had said, like, where did you say you're calling from? And I was like, oh, I speak very quickly, my apologies, play act. So then I was able to kind of slow down as well and actually think about what I'm saying, rather than like being like, hi, it's Adrienne, like, I'm being really like fast.
Yeah. Well, that's nerves too, right? It's nerves. But again, that's another thing to learn from. Like, you can just have your 2-sentence script at the beginning. Hi, it's Adrienne. I hope this is a good time. Pause.
Yeah.
It's not a good time. Okay. Great. Well, I'm just calling from Play Act. regarding the fun we had at the campfire, or whatever is your lead in. When is a better time for me to call? And half the time they'll go, oh, actually, don't worry.
That exactly happened. One woman was like, oh, my son did the demo. He loved it. I was only thinking about you.
There you go.
And
all you need is a minute, right? Just say, listen, I hear you're busy. Let me just, confirm your email address. I just want to send you a couple of quick offers, but you did the right thing. You put a deadline on it of this week. It's fast action taker deadlines, right? Don't leave that 10% hanging out there in the wind. This week.
Yeah.
This week is meaningful for you. It's a give and a take, right? So you're giving them 10%, but only in exchange for them making a fast decision.
Yeah. Yeah, and I said that as well to them.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was really, I'm looking forward to going back to the calls. I'm not seeing it as kind of like, oh God, I have to make those calls. Like, I'm like, yeah, I'm really looking forward to, typing up their email addresses and, setting up the trial, sending out the link, that kind of stuff. So it's great. Good. It's really good.
That's really good. That's great to hear. And, one thing my husband hates cold calling. I can't think of anybody who loves cold calling.
Yeah.
Every time I talk to people about cold calling, I just have to that's all I do is cold call practically.
You're very good at this.
Well,
cold
again,
you're very good at this.
Nobody's born knowing how to do it, right?
Yeah.
It's that thing of the more you do it, the more it becomes easy. And it's a skill like anything. Every business owner needs to have a certain, your success rate is going to be determined on how many skills you have, how well you do them, and are they the right skills for what you actually need for the fastest return on what you're trying to do. And if the fastest return on what you're trying to do is fill up those seats, then you need sales skills, right?
Yeah.
And there can be a variety of those. And this week's call is talking about marketing as a follow-on to last week's beginning discussion of sales, but really they're intertwined, right? Sales is when you actually ask for the exchange to take place. And there's a procedure for that. Marketing is anything that supports that. So it gets the brand out there, it gets them thinking about you. It's that demo that you did. You weren't actually saying to them, okay, let's get married that day. You were just simply saying, here, give us a try. This is what we do. Here's who we are. Get to know us, right? That's all marketing. But your sales stuff is when you actually go for a close, where you say, oh, now that you've done a demo with us, any interest in signing up for a class? You're going for that sale, you're just testing it to see. And maybe sometimes you get lucky and go, oh yeah, I was absolutely looking for a drama class for my kid for the autumn. Yes, tell me more. Okay, great, here you go. And you may not even make the sale that day, but you're going to make it now when you go back to call them, right? Potentially. And sometimes you won't. Sometimes you'll just send them that link after the second call and they'll get it. But the thing is, you've had now 2 incredibly high touch moments where they have not only seen a brochure, seen your brand, seen your logo, sunk in the name into their brains, but they've also had their child test you and your service. They've tried it on for size. They've liked it. So you've gotten past about 5 different hurdles with them. Then comes a phone call. They're in a carpool line, so they're not in a place to be able to make an exchange with you, but they're excited to receive your call because that's the 6th high touch moment where you, the owner personally, is reaching out. And the last step is now at their own time, but within 7 days from now, you're going to fence them in to make a decision and buy, right? So you've done all of those things really, really well in the sales process. The marketing is everything that supports that. So when you've got these teenagers now on a list, but they're not showing up until September, it's June the 7th. Yeah. They've got an entire summer of their first loves and their everything, messing around in the park, whatever they're doing, going to the sea, going on holiday. They're gone. They're out with their friends. They're not thinking of this, and neither are their parents until, August the 29th when they go back to school, and then still they're not thinking about it. They're thinking about getting their books and their uniforms and meeting up with their friends who they haven't seen for the last 3 months. but your class starts maybe, say, September 7th. But by September 7th, if you wait for them, it's too late by then. 3/4 of them will be long gone.
Yeah.
Right? So what you actually need to do is just, instead, that's when the marketing supports getting them in. Because in actuality, okay, we could say that you've made a sale in terms of giving them a free class, and you have in a way, but in some ways you haven't, because the money isn't part of that yet. Not
Yeah.
the following week, say the 14th of September, right? When they actually make a commitment. But you know, many of them might get there and say, oh, yeah, I fully intend to keep going. And they bring you the money on September the 7th for the rest of the time. And that's fine if you do the marketing to set that up and inform them and educate them of your sales process. Your sales process is, yes, I'm giving you the first class free. Get to know, like, and trust us, and you'll have a great time. If you bring a friend, you know, I'll give you maybe another 5% off for bringing a friend. It's a win for you because you're filling another seat, but they get, say, total of 15% off the entire semester. That's brilliant for them, right? Or even better, don't give them more money off. Give them a prize, a souvenir that helps you, like a T-shirt that they can wear with your brand. Or if you have something a bit, you know, I don't know what the fashionable thing is. It used to be rubber bracelets with the names on it, but you know, I don't know if there's something that teens in particular like. Maybe that's something that you can even ask them in your nurturing email campaigns over the summer. You know, what's hot in teen fashion these days? You guys like T-shirts? You can give them a small list of choices, and then use that survey to inform what you actually create. Maybe even get them involved in the design of something.
That's amazing.
You know, engage them. Doesn't have to be anything taxing for you, but it could be just simply, you know, what do you think should be the bonus that we give to all of our teens who show up for the free class this year? Should it be a rubber bracelet, a T-shirt, or a necklace, or, you know, or whatever you do you know what I mean? So marketing just is never ending. All it is just different creative ways, and you're a very creative person, so you'll come up with things that make sense for you, both budget-wise, your time-wise especially. You don't want to put a lot of, you know, you don't want to over-invest your time in marketing, because marketing isn't the goal. Sales is the goal. But what you want to do is you want to ignite their imagination, captivate them, get them to pay attention, stop them in their tracks, and then just long enough so that you can educate them on your sales process. And then they have a decision. Either they want in or they don't want in.
Yeah.
Right? But if they don't even know about you, it's like if they live in the next town and they can't hear you over a loudspeaker, they're never going to come to your class, right? But if you get the loudspeaker over to them and attract them to get over to your class, you have a good chance that they'll sign up and pay you to come every week, right? So that's all that marketing really is. And depending on who the audience is, you've got different groups, right? You've got your tell us again about your groups. You've got teens. Who else?
So I'm just starting teens this year. Because Dunleary is like nearly sold out, so they need kind of another class. I would think. I think it'll be easy enough, not to fill it, but to start it.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. So the other classes then are primary school. They kind of go 4, 5 to 7, and then 8 to kind of like, it was 8 to 12, like, but realistically it's kind of 8, 9, 10. You might get the odd. The boys, the 11-year-olds, 12-year-old boys, some of them don't mind. They like it, but the girls, there's not a chance. Once they come to 11 or 12, they're cool. They don't want to be. Boys are more easy, don't like.
Yeah. Okay.
So there's 2 groups just, yeah.
Let's see. I'm actually trying to pull up our other document as well, because I just want to go over real quick. You had a few other goals you were trying to get done. I know you had a crazy week. You got 30 out of 50 calls done, and what were where are our other?
The pitch. So I added in the pitch. It's very rough still.
Okay.
I added that in. I put in the costings for my classes, which was a really good exercise as well.
Great.
And then the other stuff that's been going on in my head was with the principals, what else I can offer them. So I called into a school the other day and I bottled it. Like, I did talk to her, but she was very intimidating. So when I came out, I was like, oh, for God's sake. But then I was very inspired because that was on Tuesday after the other class, because it's right beside. So, you know, you can go, like, I'm working in St. Catherine's, so they have a reference. But she was really, like, you know, very, very strong, like very in my face, completely intimidated. So it's like, okay, thank you, bye-bye.
Yeah.
But then I thought, oh, I could have offered her, like, as we do in-school drama, you know, I could understand what she was saying, but I could have offered her another few things. So I'm going to call her and say, hi, I was down with you. I know you're very busy, blah, blah. So that's where the calls have helped as well. And even though I haven't end results right now, but I think that even going around in my head about what to offer, or, you know, like the teachers, what I can do on the newsletter and stuff like that, like, that's all been really positive for me, I think.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
So just generally speaking, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you feel you did with your goals this week?
I think for end product kind of thing, I probably didn't do very well. I probably did maybe 4 out of 10, maybe 3 or 4 out of 10. But I think that what has come from the process of, like, developing in my head and stuff, I think I probably did very well, even though I don't have the end results yet, you know, that kind of way, because
that's okay.
I wouldn't have thought of, like, you know, what else I could offer a principal, you know, like, before I would have just went, oh yeah, okay, so we're not, and even with Skull I'm like, oh, I could actually ring that principal back and offer this, or, you know, the schools that I am in, how can I get more from them, because they already know me. So I just wouldn't have thought of those things before. So even though I haven't done anything right now, it is going on. Great. So I think that's 100%, like, very good.
And that actually is the perfect lead-in for us to talk about your numbers today.
Yes.
We're talking about marketing, but marketing is only ever informed by the reality of sales, right? Where we are, and we have to benchmark where we are. So that exercise I gave you, I want to actually share the screen right now. And I know that you and I have agreed to record these calls, and I just always want to be conscious that there may be future people looking at your numbers. So I just want to make sure that's okay, that we've got your permission to do that, to share that. Is that all right?
Yeah.
And most likely it's not going to be anybody here in Ireland. It's going to be somebody in some other jurisdiction, probably in Texas or some completely different location, where this will be helpful to them to think this way as well, to go through these exercises. But there is a chance that there might be somebody here locally. So, but most likely not. So you probably just have to
take out the school names. You know, that type of way. I'd say if it was in Ireland, I would say you would have to take out just this input school one or something, you know.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. That sounds good. So let's see. I'm not sure how we can do that without actually having done that in advance with the document. But let me see. So maybe what I'll do is I won't share on the screen, and we'll do that. So good point. I won't share that right now, but we'll adapt the document, and I'll just share that later as a supplementary thing that people can look at. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Thank you for that. So I'm actually going to just read through. I don't know if you have a copy of it too. But okay, so you just made mention of something that is an incredibly important thing, and I want to emphasize it, because a lot of times when we say we want to grow, we start thinking about more, right? Yeah. That's what growth means, and that's vague, and it can be very open to interpretation. And so in our case last week, we were talking about how, I believe, you had, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think you have 12 classes. or
Yeah.
or we're aiming for 12 classes?
Yeah.
Okay. So currently, how many did you have this year? Again, just.
I think it went to 12 at one stage because I was in a school for a term, and I think another school I was in for a term, and then it didn't run again.
Okay.
And I think it went to kind of 10.
Okay.
So I think that's the one you have there. I have in the two schools actually that didn't run.
Okay, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's fine. And I know that you and I, 2 weeks ago, we had said we had a goal set to try to bring on 4 more schools before September. So getting you up to maybe, is it then 16 schools, or are we talking about 14 schools?
I think 14.
14, okay.
Yeah.
So right now, I'm looking at a chart that you just put together with some notes, which is great. You've got a younger and an older class at 1, 2, 3, 4 different schools. So that's 8 schools. You've got a 1-hour drama class at another school. I don't know what age group that's for. And those are your after schools. So those are nine separate locations, basically. Well, 9 separate classes.
Yeah.
And 5 separate locations. And then you've got 1, 2, 3 more locations with, again,
2 classes.
2 classes each. So sometimes when we're thinking about growth or more, we think about adding more schools or adding more sites. And this is what our goal was a couple of weeks ago, right? 2 to 4 more sites. But when I look at the most important thing for you in terms of your numbers, there are a certain amount of, how can I say this so it's not confusing? There are several different numbers or key, they call them KPIs, key profit indicators, right? Or so it would be a number of different factors that you are taking into consideration when it comes to measuring the health and the growth of your profits and your sales in your business. And the key is, just like a household budget, if you spend more than you make, you're going to be in debt. If you earn more than you spend, you're going to have a profit, right? And the goal for the business is always to earn more than you spend. So with each class, what I always used to do was I would look at each class and I would say, okay, how much roughly, I'm not going to get into the minutia of it because that would just take too long, but if I look at my key numbers, how much do I need for my numbers to portray for me to know that I've got a healthy class in every single place that I'm running a class? So what I would look at is I would say, well, in certain centers, they're charging me, say, 10, because I used to work in dollars, they're charging me $10 an hour to rent the room, right? Or they might charge me 25, or they might charge me 30% of what I make to rent the room, which is a very expensive rent. But though that particular rental expense is going to vary, and I need to perhaps get a little granular. So depending on the space that I'm in, I need to calculate for each space what my number one cost is the rental fee. The first cost to think about. The second cost to think about is my teacher. And it's deceiving, right? Because you are also a teacher, but you are the founder and you are the business owner. So you're wearing 3 hats, whereas your teachers are really only wearing 1 hat. Sometimes they're wearing 2 if you put them into an administrative role to assist you. But really you want them out in the classroom. You want to have as many teachers, and that should be a fairly straight up rate that you're paying them, whatever that is. It might be 20 euros an hour, it might be 30 euros an hour, it might be 30 euros for an hour and a half, because class is 1 hour and you give them 15 minutes to set up and 15 minutes to clean up afterwards. Whatever way you work it, there's a rate for each class that your teacher teaches. So that's your second number. You've got your rental rate, you've got your staffing rate. Then you've got supplies. And you may not have any supplies for drama. We certainly did in art. And I used to figure about roughly $2.50 per lesson per child, which is actually a little expensive because some days we'd have some clay and other days we'd just have ripped up collage paper. And so the collage paper would be pennies, whereas the clay might be $4 per child, but it would all sort of even out by the end of, by the end of a semester. So I would just hit the average and call it $2.50. So if you've got costumes that you have to invest in, or if you've got, there may be an end of the semester show, or there may be a field trip, or there may be some other thing, or there may be a guest artist that you bring in for one class, all of those factor into your cost for the overall semester, right? And then what you do is you say, okay, very simply, the next thing is you've got a couple of numbers that you want to be aware of. What is those are all my costs. Then the next number is, what is my minimum amount of students to just cover those costs, right? And it might be 4, it might be 5, it might be 2, it might be 3, but you need to figure that out. But that's the cost it takes just to do those basic things. You actually need more students to cover the costs of things like advertising for the class, marketing. And you may not have very much, but it's still going to cost you to print off flyers and for somebody to stand on the street corner and hand those out. It's also still going to cost you to put an ad up on Facebook, or maybe pay the school to post an ad for the year for €25 or whatever they charge you, if they're going to charge you. You can ask them if that's a possibility. Or, it may cost you to pay a teacher to go around and make all the cold calls that you're currently doing, but maybe you've got somebody great who can get on the phone, and that's a skill set that you can train somebody else to do and free up your time. So that's the second level of, let's call it, on the path towards profitability. And that is the number that should cover the marketing, but it should also maybe start to pay a little bit towards your time. And your time we haven't even factored in yet, because as a business owner, really you've got all these other expenses. You might have insurance, you might have a telephone bill to cover, you've got an internet bill to cover. If a computer breaks, you've got to buy a new computer, etc. So you've got monthly expenses and overhead of some kind, even if you're working a home-based business, which is the smart thing to do because you don't have a crazy rent over your head. But you still need to factor that in. So there's 2 points, right? There's when does the class itself pay for just its own costs? Then when does the class start to pay and cover all of your overhead costs? And the final one is, now is that 7 students instead of 4 students to pay for overhead as well? And then the last number is, how many students does it take to actually make it comfortable for Adrienne to get paid? And let's say, if your teachers are getting paid, just round it out to, okay, if they're getting, let's call it on the high side then, because you always want to be conservative. So if they're getting paid €30 an hour, how much do you deserve? Because you're doing all of this work. So, and you're putting them in a job, and you've got to pay them their taxes and all of that other stuff. So now what does the owner make? If the owner's goal is to make 50 an hour or 100 an hour or 200 an hour, and your worth is definitely up somewhere around 150 to 400 an hour, and you may laugh at that, but that's your worth because you're building a business, you're growing a business. So eventually you probably, you probably will pay yourself a flat salary, and then there might be an owner's draw, which basically means a little bit extra at the end of the year or the end of the tax period that you can put away for yourself, right? We're not there yet because we're still growing, but it's something that you need to keep in mind. And that's harder to calculate, but your flat salary isn't. Like, let's say you decided you were going to pay yourself 36,000 euro a year, and you do the math and you break that out by, say, 42 weeks of the year of classes. And so then, how many hours a week do you spend? And then that's your hourly. That's if it's 50 euro or 30 euro, whatever that math is, to pay for yourself. And, where you will feel like, okay, good, I'm finally actually paying myself too. So those are 3 different points along the line to getting to profitability. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's an exercise. Now that you've got broken out these numbers here with how many students you have per class and how much, how many bodies you can put with one teacher in each of these classes, and to get to capacity. What I actually don't see on here is what is the capacity, what's the maximum capacity of each class in each camp. And we want to see that because that's actually going to be the factor that is the breaking point, meaning when you need to, as you're feeling it in Dunleary, start adding on new classes in the same area. Okay, because you've reached capacity. You can't do it anymore unless you just add more classes. And that's a great problem to have. That's what you're aiming for. So in some ways, when we just go double back again, the reason I'm going through this long whole arc and explanation is because these are the numbers that actually matter at every day. These are what you're working for every single day. And as long as you keep your focus on how many children per class do I need in order to actually hit these, minimum number to run a class, 5. Because there's no point in running a class if I'm paying the community. Unless you're doing it as a marketing exercise just to start a new class, that's a different situation. But if you feel like something's just never really taking off and it's always coming in under the threshold of profitability, it may be time to make that hard decision to take a look and cut it and move somewhere else, right? Have you exhausted all possible ways to market to get to everybody who you can possibly get to if you believe in the area and it's just not catching fire? There may be other things going on. There may be competition, stealing, mind share of your customers in another drama class that's just opened up that you weren't aware of, just a couple of doors down. Or there may be certain dates that you've scheduled your classes for and they conflict with the community event that's the biggest community event every year, and that's a problem for you if you're trying to start a class and get everybody to come out for the first day. So you have to be kind of aware of a few of these things. It sounds overwhelming. It's not, because you're going to be gathering these bits of data the longer that you stay in business and keep experimenting. But you do have to make note of those things and start calendaring them so that you can more strategically schedule and make sure that you've got enough children to keep the class running and growing and all those kinds of things. And again, growth, just to go back to that term growth, sometimes people think growth means I'm doing really well when I've got 150 classes all over the town.
Yeah.
Right? But in actuality, every time you put on a new class, it's going to cost you, because you're going to have to dedicate resources to get the word out, put an effort in to get new people in. And unless you've got some tried and true mechanism, which you will develop if you haven't already, to get new people in the door and keep them in the door, it's going to be tricky. But what you want to do is you want to put that machine to work every time you open up a new place, right? And the machine may just simply be, for yourself what works the best. It's a flyer, Then it's a demo day. Then it's you maybe going out and talking to the principal. Then it may be, running bring a friend and get a free class promotion. It may be give a free t-shirt to, so you have maybe a series of 12 different things that you do every time you go to open up a new area. And that you run like science, like clockwork. And you'll develop it if you haven't already been developing that kind of awareness. And you probably have a good sense of it now because Dun Laoghaire is taking off. So you can kind of look back and reflect, what has worked over there and why? And if you just happen to open up a class in an incredibly thriving place, great. What other thriving places are there around town? What characteristics are similar in other places to what is working in Dun Laoghaire? So you start being more strategic about where you open up, rather than just opening up just because one parent or two parents say they really would like you, but they're in a zone. They're the only parents,
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it happens. So growth, if we look down at the bottom of, actually after those original costs, I had some very important questions for you to consider there. And again, when we talk about growth, do we prefer growth in enrollment or growth in income?
I think both in a way. I think that because, the way, like you were just saying, that, you have to make a tough call if something isn't working. So you have to kind of have your eye on the ball as well to like start one or two.
Yeah.
Things tying over. But I would love to get on top of the classes that are running to fill those numbers. Like I started in a school last year and the numbers are really poor and I actually don't know why. That's like, it's really like, now the school was very unorganized. It was the first time I went to a school where they weren't very in charge. So it was a bit, it started a bit all over the place and it kind of continued that way. So I want to give that another try.
Yeah.
And maybe try a different way of maybe being out there like the end of August or the very start of September, or I'm not really sure. So I would like to look at the registration, definitely, like the classes that are up and running and getting the numbers in there. Like, how can there's no reason why the Lantern Centre shouldn't be up and running, but I know I dropped the ball myself a lot of times down there. Like the classes are great in that, but when I got pregnant and stuff like that, and like I took for granted that because the camps went so well that it would transfer and it didn't. And then the younger classes always do kind of really well, and then it just didn't transfer over. So there was a few things there. So I would like to give that a little bit of attention.
Right.
As well, and just one or two things like that. Like I know I definitely have dropped the ball. So yeah, I think registration, and I think still one or two other places.
I agree. Yeah. I think what is your maximum per class or per teacher?
Well, what happens with two of the venues there, you'll see with the figures which ones, there was always a few stragglers in one of them. So there's 22 in one class, which I would never take, but I just got in an assistant, a drama student who was studying, wanted to get into that area. So then once you have two people with you, it just looks better for the parents and everything. Like I could never have 22 myself because they just wouldn't listen to you anyway, Yeah. The ideal number is 15.
So when you bring him in though, are you adding cost now?
I am in a way, but it's like €10 per class. And then you're training them at the same time. It's worked out really well.
Okay.
So two of the teachers I have working with me started like that, but they know exactly what I want because they worked on one-to-one with me. Great. So I give them class plans. So I'm very, they know how strict I am, like as in the way I want the class to run, like, and so that works out really well. So they're out teaching now. And then there's two other assistants that we found there just a few months ago, Laura and Leah, and they're lovely girls and they're really instrumental and they have just come on so much. So when I wanted to pull back from Dun Laoghaire, Leah was able to take over in City West. Brilliant. And Alicia was able to take over there, and they've they know the flow of stuff. So it did cost me, especially when she was in City West, like 2 assistants, because the classes weren't really making tons of money kind of thing. But it was kind of an investment that paid off.
You're absolutely right.
Out hiring too.
No, you're absolutely right. It's so there's always 2 ways that business owners look at money spent, right? And one of them is cost and one of them is investment. And oftentimes a business owner, and again, this is an emotional thing, it depends just simply on how they're feeling and what word they use. Right? If you're feeling good about where you're at and you feel like things are clicking and you're spending money to make things click, that's now suddenly an investment. Whereas if you're feeling pessimistic, it's a cost, right? And these are interchangeable. They're not interchangeable. They're totally different things, actually. But these are interchangeable in the mind of a business owner when just dependent on their own mood, oftentimes, right? And you'll hear this a lot when you hear about sort of big businesses laying off lots of people because, staff is a cost. Well, actually, staff is an investment, always. People are always an investment. Whether or not you're making the right investment is your job as the owner to be able to have that judgment and know if you're picking and choosing the right person and then teaching them the right things at the right time to make the right decisions and to be autonomous and run what it is you need them to run, right? So it all falls back on your shoulders ultimately. But when I ask you, does it add a cost actually to bring in an assistant? What I'm looking at there from an accounting standpoint is just simply, is there now a new maximum that you can have in a class now that you've got an assistant? So like, let's say the threshold is you hit 20 students and suddenly you want, you don't want to stop the registrations from coming in. So maybe there's an assistant you can bring in that will cost you something, whether that's a tenner or whether it's another 30, I don't know. And then that would allow you to bring the class to a certain, maybe 25 students in the class because you've got 2 teachers now and 25 kids, and that's more manageable. Is that your maximum? The reason I ask that is because these are also the granular details that you need to look at and say, at a certain point, my school play act provides a certain standard of experience for each and every one of our students. And there's a maximum beyond which suddenly it's a diminishing return. I'm not giving them the quality anymore. But even with a second staff member, you can increase the maximums and still maintain that, good quality balance up to a certain point. So I think
that max would be the 22 that I have. Like, that's the most I've ever had, and that would be like the absolute. Like, I think that when I met up the cost, like, I was like, she's going to get €200 for that term and experience, but 3 more or 4 more or 5 more students. That would be kind of like 18 is even okay. So we just say 18 on your own because they're senior students. It's still 4 more students that aren't just on a waiting list waiting kind of thing. But I wouldn't go over that. Okay. Because you're right. They wouldn't. It would kind of become like crowd control.
Yeah. No, you don't want that.
Each other, and and I've loads of boys as well. They love the L drama, so they're a little bit more boisterous at that age.
Yeah, you don't want that, because that obviously turns into a negative then from the parents as well perspective. Yeah. So great. So those are just some of the questions. That I'm not judging one way or another, but I agree with your instinct there to say, what I have already, let me grow that and max that out. In other words, first grow the enrollments. So that informs us as to what we're going to spend our efforts on in terms of marketing. As you said, with the Lantern Center, you have a feeling that there's more that you can be doing, or more that you could have done. And so I'm going to challenge you to sort of think about what if there's a 10-step scientific approach to you getting a class off the ground, then maintaining that class and growing the enrollment steadily over time until you've got a maximum. And if we were trying to actually do that in a sped up fashion so that your maximums are being hit as soon as September comes around, you know, so that we actually max out every single class that you've got on the schedule, we're now maxing it out in September. What in the world could you be doing 10 different ways to get the message out and to support that final phone call or that final click on a link to actually, for parents to take out their credit card and pay you the money? What are the 10 things you can do prior to them doing the transaction with you that you think are going to be the strongest things for getting the most attention of the right kind of customers? And all you actually need is 18 in a class. Is that it?
Yeah, like, I mean, even if you had 10 like 12 is even really good in a class, you know. 15 is lovely, and then you might have a few stragglers. So, you know, like, it's really hard to keep a class going for a drama when there's 2, 3, 4.
Yeah, no, but that's not my question. So I want you to hear my question again. We are aiming for the fastest growth right now for you, so that every single one of your teachers has a full class. What is that number? Is that 18? Is it 15?
15. Yeah.
15. Okay. So if we've got 14 classes that we're aiming to start, and I'm going to cut you a break because 2 of those are new. But let's say we've got 10 conservatively, and we've got 15. That means, what are we going to do to get 150 students signed up and paying between now and, say, mid-September, you know, because that'll be about the time when the classes really are starting to hit their stride. Okay. So that's a challenge, but it's also the best challenge, right? Because this is the thing that if you can actually hit stage number 1 and max those enrollments out, you're going to inevitably then have income, right? Well, I say that, but then we haven't actually really done the costings yet in detail. So I want you to also this week, I want you to think about, what are those 10 steps? I want you to write down 10 different creative ways that you can systematically, for every single site that you've got a class, that you can actually market to them. So one of them is a flyer, we know that. One of them is maybe doing a free demo day. One of them is, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But I want you to be methodical and apply each of those 10 steps to every single location that you're running classes. So this becomes your marketing formula, your secret sauce for your success, okay? So think about that. The second thing, which is really at the heart of how do we grow, and will help you maybe even come up with some ideas to add to that marketing secret sauce formula, is, what are my 3 magic numbers? How many students is it going to take for me to pay just for the class costs in the first place? What's my minimum number, in other words? And you're going to be ruthless about this. If I can't get 4 kids in a class to break even and just at least pay for those, then I can't even get, you know, after I've done my 10 magic marketing steps, that means there's a problem with the school, with the community. They're not backing me up. They're not taking the steps to get the flyers out to people. They're putting them in the garbage or whatever, or they're forgetting to put it in the newsletter. But I've done all of my 10 steps, and I've followed up, and I've made sure. So this is not a place that actually I can grow in, because I don't have the support of that school. So if you get to that point and there's any one of those, you can be ruthless about saying, sorry, we have to cancel the class. And it's a painful call to make to those 4 students, but offer them a benefit. Can you come join a different location? Come to the Lantern. center.
Yeah.
Come to the, so you offer them something else. You offer them a week, or you take a survey. What other days are you free to take classes? Would you be free on a Saturday morning? I have one going on in city center. Can you join that one? So you offer them something, if you know, a plan B, in other words. But I want you to be ruthless about cutting out places that do not work, that limp along, because they suck out your energy. They suck out all of the costs, and the enthusiasm are going to take away from another better opportunity somewhere else. So you have to be pretty ruthless about that. Now, you know, magic might happen, and you might find that if you apply this formula, this 10-step marketing secret sauce play act formula, to all of these locations, that every single one of them sees not just the minimums are met, but maybe, you know, your mid-center, maybe 7 kids is enough to cover not just the costs of running the class, but also the costs of taking care of marketing and maybe employee taxes and insurance and whatever those other things, but just not quite enough yet to cover and pay for Adrienne.
Yeah.
That's okay. That means that a location like that, you just have to dig in and find out, oh, the principal was actually out sick for 3 weeks and she's the one who's enthusiastic and nobody told you. So the message didn't get out. Okay, so we'll try again in a new semester. Surely it'll be better. Or we'll better train the secretary because the secretary was standoffish and she didn't realize that the principal wanted this class to run.
Mm.
So you have to become a little bit of a sleuth and a relationship builder to go in and find out what went wrong. I did all my part, but what went wrong? Was there something that I missed? Was there something that wasn't understood? Did I not get you something in time for a deadline? You know, what else? What can I do better? And is there anything I can do to help the school make it easier to get the word out? So you're really trying to build that relationship with the people who are supporting you in that location and making sure that they're meeting you halfway. It's a partnership. If you're paying rent to them, they need to be doing work for that. Right?
Yep.
And it's, you know, it's a fine balance, but you just put on your nice hat when you go over there and you just sort of say, you know, what else can I be doing to support you to make this easier for all of us? Because we're partners here.
Because there's one of the schools there, and it just had 5 students, and in the whole school there's only 30 students, but they were paying proper rates, like the same as Dunleary and everywhere else. But it was just a 1-hour class, but it was still working out with the 5 students because I wasn't charged venue costs as €50 an hour. So I was able to get a teacher in and just cover it, but the kids were like unruly. So I knew the last time I had them before Christmas, because I was like, this is disheartening. Like, you know, the teacher came out crying. I was like, this is like, this isn't on. Like, I mean, they wouldn't do it for me because, like, I would have, like, you know, I'm strict at the start, you know, they wouldn't have necessarily the same way. But I knew by complaining to their parents, because they're international students, that I'd probably lose them. So I did speak to the parents. I just said they can't behave like this. You know, it's just not acceptable. Like, because it was going on for weeks, kind of thing. So then they all left. But the school have been on to me all the time, going, "We're starting a new term. Will you do drama? We'll put it," and then they just haven't got the numbers because it's so small as well.
Sure.
So I got on to them and asked them if they wanted to do something during school hours.
Okay.
Because that way they'd have to pay me. So now I'm just thinking maybe I will call into them and say, because it's been on email, and you know the way sometimes stuff is lost through email, or, you know, so I might actually call to them and say, because they are definitely interested because they've stayed in touch with me.
Yeah.
You know?
Yes, but again, do your costings. Because again, you've already described in a nutshell part of the problem with having a low enrollment place.
Yeah.
You would feel more forgiving. It's like, again, remember, when things are going well, it's an investment to pay your teacher because you're happy, the teacher's happy, things are growing. When things aren't going well, it's a cost. right?
Yeah.
And you kind of just described that to me. The teacher came out in tears. The kids were, I had to go in there. I mean, like, if you add up the fact that in one class period, you have to drop what you're doing, your attention. If you're building a business, the minimum that you're worth to the company is a couple hundred an hour. The minimum. That doesn't mean that you earn that yourself and pocket that. What it means is that you are driving that. So at every hour of every day, you're adding 200 in value to the company because you're putting on a new site, you're getting more registrations, you're building over time, right? And your time is hugely precious. So if you have to drop that activity to go off and discipline kids when there's already a teacher at 30 an hour doing that, now suddenly it's 230 an hour to discipline kids, and only 5 of them. I want you to think of it that way, because this is exactly what it is in reality. There's an opportunity cost in terms of you having to be pulled away. And you know what? This is just part of the business. You're always going to have to be pulled away to be doing something, whether it's, training a teacher or bringing in a new apprentice, or, maybe you have to sub because you'd rather sub than not have a critical class, have nobody when somebody's sick. There's always going to be something, but the more that you can control when it is that you are pulled away from that really critical, mission critical engine building activity that only you can do for the company, the more you're going to grow, the more you're going to grow faster, the more teachers you're going to have, the more apprentices who can actually step into these roles of teachers, take on more classes. There'll be more, for every class that has 10 kids, let's say that makes €25. And if you've got 10 of those running, that's €250 running on one Tuesday. Profit for the company, you multiply that by 5, now you've got whatever the math is there for that. So you've got 1,500 a week in profit, 5 days a week. And that's after all the costs and everything are coming in. That's on a weekly basis. You multiply that by 4 weeks, suddenly that's 6,000 in profit every month. Do you know what I mean? So like every time you're pulled away from building, and you are distracted from getting that 10 kids in class that maybe spin off €25 in profit every single time, you are, your staff and your team need to be autonomous, and you need to communicate that to them, because you're the one who's driving more and more classes and work for them. So it is a team effort. No one person is less important than the other. It's just you all have different jobs to do, and you've got a different value that you're offering, that you're responsible to the company for, right? They're responsible for keeping up their bit. You're responsible for yours. The more you work as a team and they can protect your time and you can protect their time, the more you guys have a chance at making this, a very profitable venture for everybody. They're happy because they get to do as many classes as they want in a week, as many camps as they want to every summer and during the holidays. A couple of them are happy because they are ambitious and they want to even take on some management roles, and you're happy to start peeling off some of that stuff, the stuff you don't like to do. Over time, you start handing it to people. Maybe that cold calling, you're good at it now, but it's kind of something that you could train somebody to do for €20 an hour. You know what I mean? And while you're still building and strategizing, what new city are we going to open up in? Because if I can get 20 more classes going, that's another 6,000 a month in profit. You see where I'm at?
Yeah.
So this is, these are all, providing these are your goals and providing that's what you want, that's fine. If that's not kind of what you're aiming at, that's fine. But at a granular level, you still need to know what's worth doing and what's not worth doing, because you can have a very nice business with just, a couple of dozen classes and a handful of staff, and you guys are happy out. But yeah, there are the numbers don't lie. There's a point at which you still need to get paid for your time.
Yeah.
You want to get paid appropriately for your time. And if you decide that you're very happy with, 20,000 a year or 50,000 a year, that number is entirely in your head, but you can see it, you can map it by looking at each of these classes on a granular level. So that's the work I'm going to send your way to do this week. And then as you do that, I want you to be thinking about what 10 marketing steps can I do to basically persuade as many people to fill up every single one of those 15 seats in every single one of those places. And if I have to get to 22 seats because we have a population explosion in popularity for my classes, what a great problem.
Yeah, big time.
Does that all work?
Yep. So it's the 10 steps. I have that down. And the other thing is the costs, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Like I'll just tell you that in my art classes, I would break even if I had 5 kids.
Yeah.
And it was worth it to me to run a class, to start a class with 5 kids. I would not, if I started a new class, if I'd already run, I guess what I'm saying is in the spring, if I'd already run in the autumn and I only was getting 5 kids back, I would cancel that class. That's how good it got in terms of the formula. I knew that once I'd already run a class, if I wasn't doubling that by the next semester, getting a minimum of 10 kids signing up, there was some problem somewhere.
Okay, yeah.
And it was often out of my control. It was usually a principal who was checked out, not interested, saying they were interested, but all they were looking at was cost, but they were not being supportive. And they weren't helping get the word out. They might even have been actively campaigning to put a different program in there. Or there was something else going on that, was beyond my control. And so I would just cancel a class and I would offer a plan B to those students who we'd cancel for.
Okay, cool.
But we would start to make money basically at around 8 students. We were starting to really get into the profit zone. But typically we would have 15 kids in a class. That was our max. And then we were really humming at that point. But those were my costs, right? Yours might be a little lower if you don't have the supply costs that I had.
Yeah, there would be some supply costs, and I never factor them in, to be honest. Like, I'm terrible. Like, there'd be a good bit of printing and materials, and I would need stuff for classes, that type of way. And so it'd be a good exercise for me to do.
Yep. Perfect.
Yeah. Great.
Okay. Well, listen, text me if you have questions, because sometimes this is a tricky one for people. And again, don't try to be too exacting. Just try to get an average. Like I was giving you the example of the clay versus the collage lessons that we had. Clay was the most expensive material because it involved clay and paint, and then brushes, and those are expensive, and
yeah.
And if brushes are reusable, how do I account for the fact that those are reusable? Well, pretty much every year I'd have to replace those. So I could say if a brush collection cost me 300 for 300 students or something like that, well, actually it would cost more. It usually costs about $3 a brush on the wholesale. So if I was spending $1,000 for the year on brushes, I would just have to factor those in over time. So just take sort of the chunk of money and divide that up by the number of lessons. Don't try to figure out how much is a paintbrush for each kid, kind of thing.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Because sometimes you don't even use the paintbrush. So how do you factor that? So
that's brilliant. Thanks a million, Geraldine.
Okay.
I love these meetings. They really inspire me.
Oh, good. Well, my goal in this is I'm going to just say it now, is that I would like to see that, we get as close to at least 10 kids a class for you in each of your conservative, the 10 good schools and locations that you're running in, so that you've got 100 students right off the bat starting in September. And then if you add more as you go on, by the end of the month, because sometimes people are just slow to register, great. But my goal would be to see that you've got about at least 100 students. I think we said that, I think you told me that you have, actually, did we add up how many students you have?
No, we didn't actually. I don't know either.
Let's do that really quickly. So we've got, I'm looking at, I've got the numbers here. So it was 10 plus 4, that's 14, plus another 10, and the next one, plus 12, and the next one, plus 22, plus 14, that's your biggie, plus 5, plus 14, and 22. Oh, coincidentally the same. Okay. Plus 9, plus 4, plus 5, plus 8. Oh, so we're actually over. So I've got 139 students in the after-school clubs and the drama clubs. Was this how many you actually had, or was this how many you're aiming for?
That's how many I have at the moment in those classes. They're actual real numbers right now.
Those are real numbers. Okay, so then we're easily going to get the 100. So then I would say my vision for you would be to actually max those out.
Okay.
So whatever that ends up being, let's see. So we've got 139. So if we're maxing those out, it'd be, what's the maximum number for the junior group? Is that also
15 would be lovely. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to say 30 for each of those. So 30 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times 6 plus, that's 15 plus, plus 30. Right, so 225. So I'm going to say I would like to see, my goal for you is to see at least 200 students.
Okay. Can I ask you, our classes are finished. The first 2 now have finished the end of May, so they're kind of staggering off this month. When do you think I should open registration for September?
There's no harm in doing it right away.
Okay, because I have all the dates and everything, so.
Great.
Okay.
I would do it right away. And I would incentivize them just as you have on the phone. So keep your life simple, make it a deal that's across the board for everybody. It's 10% if you register by, say, June, where are we now? June the 7th, June 21st or something like that.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea. And the other thing I was going to ask you very quickly, sorry, I know we're gone over. I usually run 3 10-week terms, but there's a lot of registry, there's a lot of admin work with starting a term, letting the parents know, then not knowing who's coming back. It's probably the way I have it set up as well. So I was thinking of doing 2 15-week terms, but then it looks like the fees are really high.
It does.
So I'm kind of like in 2 minds, like what is the right thing to do?
Well, you have an option actually with the system on your website where you can also take a monthly fee. So you can just, every month you're billing them rather than one chunk at the beginning, which might actually be easier for your cash flow. So like, let's say it's 150 for a 15-week term, just to keep the numbers even. So you would basically
150 for 15 weeks.
150, is it?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So let's say every month then you're just charging them 50.
Okay.
And
that's a yearly subscription, isn't it?
monthly, yeah. I mean, you basically set the date ranges. You can actually check in with Class for Kids and they'll help you if you want to set that up as a subscription. And you can announce it. What you can do is you can say, if somebody pays for the full thing, it's only 150. This is also a way to raise your rates a little bit. If they go for the subscription, it's just 55 a month. So 55, 55, 55. So you're actually earning an extra little bit for the convenience for them of not having to pay all at once. But you get to keep a little extra something for having to run their card 3 times.
Okay, cool.
So you can give them, you can give them that option. But how you would set it up in the system is you would set it as a subscription. And then you would be able to do a manual payment, I think, of just charging them a one-time, 150 rate if that's what they want to do. But it would be entirely up to you how you would like to do that.
Okay, cool. It gives me loads to think about, Geraldine. Thanks a million.
Yeah, no worries. Well, but reach out to them like right away if you have questions, because they can also tell you what other clubs are doing. A lot of them are doing the subscription thing because it's easier for cash flow for parents. And it might actually encourage a few more enrollments.
Yeah.
If you wanted to, you could even send out one quick email with just a 2-question survey, just how, what would make life easier for you, and you try to get a sense as to, we're thinking about changing the way that we do our registrations and offering a monthly subscription rate to spread the costs over time for you. Would that be better or less preferable for you? And if you come back and there's overwhelming, let's say 75-80% of the parents are like, oh my gosh, we love the monthly idea, that's so much easier on our budget, I would say it's a no-brainer. Change it.
Yeah, I think a lot of parents would go for it. I've been thinking about it for a while.
Yeah. It also makes it easier for you to add people midway.
Yeah.
In a way, because they feel like they can jump in then.
Yeah, totally. That's great. Thanks a million, Geraldine.
No worries.
That was a great session. Thanks so much.
All right. Well, listen, lots to think about, lots to do. And well done. Keep going on your calls. I know I've given you loads to think about there, but just, how does an elephant eat lunch? One bite at a time. So.
So we're 2 elephants then, Geraldine. Have a great weekend. I hope you get some rest.
Yeah. You too.
Okay. Thanks a million, Geraldine. See you next week.
See you next week. Bye.